Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road toward the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and, hey, is that a bush? Or a giant green rabbit? I don't know. In the corner table by the fire are three people. One of them is slowly realizing that it's a bush and a rabbit. That's me, your co-host, Mandy Hauk. Welcome to Believe to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Here at Believe to See, we explore the relationship between faith, art, and storytelling. Our goal is to connect the great story, the great stories, and our own stories, so that we can better understand what it means to live with a Christian imagination. So first, let me introduce my co-host, Christina Brown. How are you doing?
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Did you see that giant green bush rabbit?
Oh, I did.
Yeah. That was pretty exciting.
Huge. Monstrous.
I think if we have questions about it, we should ask our guest.
I think so too.
Here we have Isaac Hands. How are you?
I'm doing great.
That's so great. Thanks for being here. So Isaac has been around the Guild. We keep trying to get him to actually join the Guild. He is a very good friend of the Guild. In fact, he writes an artist profile for us once a quarter. And Isaac is a photographer, and we want to talk to him about photography and what he does. And and then we will get to the bush that is a rabbit.
Yes.
You can explain that.
I would love to.
So tell the listeners who you are, Isaac.
Yeah, I'm a photographer. I live here in the Springs. I've been here for like maybe 7 or 8 years now, I think. Yeah, no, 9, almost 9. Fall in love with photography when I was a kid. My whole defense for not being in the Guild is that I was in grad school. And so I cannot do both of them.
I know, but
soon.
that past tense.
Yes,
So
I'm just taking a breather.
Okay.
I need a break.
right.
I finished last summer.
Okay. I'll just ask you once a quarter.
That's fine. Yeah, fair. Yes, as you should.
Okay. I'll continue with that. So, how do we explain the rabbit that is also a bush?
The rabbit that is also a bush is a photograph that I took while building my thesis, which was all about road trip photography. And while I was staying with a friend out in LA, I was just taking a walk. That's part of my process, is like going out for a walk with my camera. Mm-hmm. And there was just this bush that was shaped like a bunny. And I said, I have to take a photo of that. Honestly, like normally I look at the light, and the light was not my favorite that day. But I was like, it's too good. I have to take it. And it is one that a lot of people are drawn to.
And it's not even just shaped like a bunny. Like, this is not normal. It has like ornamentation for the eyes.
Yeah.
It only has one eye though, right?
I think that there's like a hole where there once was an eye. The other eye is like, I think it's like a can. Like, something like, it's very jank for sure.
Someone's having fun with it. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
One of the things I love like taking photos of is like these random spaces or objects that like very much have a human imprint on it. Like you have to look at it and go, there's no way that bush just grew like that. Because that tells you a lot about the person who lives at that house.
Yes.
Based upon the bunny bush.
Yes.
I just think that's a super interesting thing to ponder.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I had to make a joke about it because I love that. I love that photo. So how did you get into photography in the first place? And then we're going to like go down the road. I didn't even do that on purpose to get to where
you should have gone with it.
Anyway, so we'll get to how you arrived at road trip photography, but how did young Isaac start out?
Yes. I grew up in the Midwest, Indiana. It was my home. Like I grew up in southern Indianapolis. My dad was an entrepreneur. And my mom was an artist. And so from an early age, I was always encouraged to follow whatever I wanted. And like from my mom being an artist, and she was an art teacher, like a high school art teacher. But then my dad saw like all the things that she was able to do with an art degree. So while most people who have like a business father probably weren't encouraged to go into the arts, he saw all the things that she was able to do. And so when I started to show artistic like ability, both of them were like pushing me to do it.
That is so cool though that your parents encouraged you, because that is a rare story.
Yes.
Listeners know it's not my story.
We actually, my dad loves Colorado, loves the mountains. And so we would come out here every so often for like hiking trips. And there was one when I was like 15, maybe, that he like was finally like, okay, you're old enough to like hold the camera, the nice camera that we had as a family, and gave it to me. And when we came back, like that was like a boys thing normally, like me and my dad did. So when we came back, my mom started looking at the photos and she was like, he's got a decent eye. Like I like liked painting and drawing and those things, but it was never like something that was easy or natural for me. Photography became very natural for me.
That's cool.
And so after she kind of saw that, they bought me a camera for my 16th birthday.
Oh,
and
wow.
then from then on, it was very much like encouraged. And I never had a job in high school. I always did like engagement shoots and family photos of all the other homeschool families and
Oh, that's so
all that sort of
cool.
stuff. Which
That
was
is
fun.
a job. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
Yeah.
It was for sure a job, but it's what
He didn't
It
work.
wasn't like Chick-fil-A.
yeah.
He didn't work for the man.
I mean, I only needed pizza money, really. So.
Yeah, right.
I always joke because when I went to college, I got my undergrad in photography. But when I went, I was studying at first to be an elementary teacher because
I could totally see that.
because I love kids. I love working with
Yeah.
kids. I realized in my first semester that like I loved kids. I didn't love teaching kids and like, teaching
That's a very
those
different
subjects.
thing.
I would love to teach art and teach photography now, but like I don't know. I had to sit through like a 7-hour seminar of like what a Christian can and can't do in like the public school system, and I was like, this is not what I signed up for.
Right.
And then I was in like math for elementary teachers, and it was the only class that ever drove me to tears. Like it was just like I hated it.
Yeah.
And so then I switched my degree to photography, and my whole joke was I had the only parents in the art department that when I called them and said I'm switching my degree to art, they were both like, "Ugh, finally!" Like they were both like so supportive and great, and so like that was when
That's
I
pretty awesome.
really like dedicated like, okay, I'm going to be a photographer.
That's really funny because our daughter Emmy was in elementary school, major, whatever. And I was just supporting what she said she wanted to do. But the whole time I was like, she likes kids, but she doesn't like groups of kids. And sure enough, she like by the end of the year, she's like, I need to switch my major and I don't know what to do. And I was trying to just let her decide. And then she started, she's like, I really always liked writing. And I was like, go for it. Because I did not major in writing because my family didn't, so I wouldn't have pushed her in it if she didn't want to. But that's really cool. I love that. Sorry, I did that horrible passive listening thing where I took your story and then told my
love hearing
similar
about it. Yeah.
story. Sorry. Anyway, so that was, so that's how you got your first camera and all that. And so, what are some of the photography genres that you've explored or because like I was saying this before in the green room, like I don't think people typically think, or at least I don't think about different genres of photography. So what are some interesting little avenues they have that we might not know about?
And you didn't just major in photography, you also took a master's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was I was going to say that as well. Is I took a break between undergrad and grad school, worked for a bit, and then I went and got my my graduate degree in visual art.
Got it.
And so I don't have
Just last year.
just
Yeah.
finished. And so the degree itself is just visual art. I studied all kinds of different art, but photography is like my medium of choice. It's what comes most naturally to me. I'm not going to pigeonhole myself, and in 20 years maybe I'll be doing something else. But I think photography will always be a part of it. Like that, it's what I
Be the next
love.
Rembrandt.
Yeah, I'll be the next Rembrandt. No, I'm
Or like a
20 years.
cinematographer because your love for movies is
I do
huge.
love movies.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
My whole joke was I keep saying that.
That's okay. We all
I
have
have lots of jokes. I'm very funny.
You
I
are.
don't know if Isaac means laughter. So like that's like
That's perfect.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm all about loving the names and meanings of names. That is really cool.
Sorry, where was I going with that?
We were talking about cinematography and you were saying your whole
Oh,
joke.
great. Okay.
Your visual arts
Yeah.
degree, yes.
The last place that I worked, I like coordinated a lot of things for the videographer, and I would always help with camera stuff. But when it came to sound, I said like, leave me out of it. Like I like my photographs, I like making it look nice and the shot really well, but I don't want to deal with sound.
Yeah,
like
the sound is a whole other
that's
thing.
a
I don't think
whole other
people
thing that
really
I don't want
think
to deal with.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, so I have my graduate degree in visual art.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
Okay.
The road trip photography.
Yeah.
I just inserted myself.
No, because I went sideways. So that was good that we went back. So
It's a road trip,
So
guys.
other-
Sometimes
It is a
you have to
road
take
trip.
turns around. Backtrack. We
so-
missed the bathroom.
we are not the kind of road trippers who have it all planned out. Like my husband. My husband will pick the restaurants we're going to stop at. It's
And then you
really
backtrack
cute.
to them. Sorry. No.
No. Well, if I'm driving, we get lost. But anyway.
Other movements in
other-
photography.
yes.
Yes. Well, so one of the things that's very interesting about photography that people don't necessarily think about because we are so saturated with images in our culture and we're just so used to them. Photography is still a baby medium. Like the first photograph was taken in 1826, 1829, around
Okay.
then. It wasn't commercialized or like available to most people until like 1890, 1900.
Oh,
like,
wow.
So only over 100, barely over 100 years for like most people to be having access to it. Like up until 1900, people got their portrait taken by very specialized photographers.
Right.
And it was like,
the daguerreotype.
yep, the
or
daguerreotype.
something.
And
And isn't that why they don't smile? Because it's too hard to hold the smile?
yeah, because they would have, at the time, they don't have the science that we do now. They don't have light meters. They were just kind of, I don't want to say winging it, but like they had to sit for a much longer time to expose the image.
Right. So if they had tried to smile, it would have blurred.
Yeah,
because
same
it
like
couldn't-
when you have like, on your iPhone, they now have those like nighttime exposure that like kind of has a longer exposure time and it might
Right.
get a little blurry. Same idea.
Right.
That
So it's not that people in the 1800s were unhappy, although they might have been.
they might have been, but
The straight faces was because of the long exposure time.
yes,
Aperture.
but also
is that
like
right?
the whole idea of it is right. Yes. Sorry, it took me a second to register. But the whole idea of like smiling during a photo is a very like modern thing. Like if you think of all the paintings and like the portraits from art history,
Oh, that's true.
most of them aren't smiling. Like smiling in the photo is a very modern idea that we have of like, I don't know, you could really get into the psychology of the modern day of
want
like
to get in the psychology.
putting
I'm
in
gonna
putting on a
revisit
mask
this later.
for social media or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is a newer thing, but yes, same idea. Only the rich really had photos taken of them,
Right.
up until like 1900, and that's when
Same with portraits, though.
Yeah, same with portraits.
Same idea.
Exactly.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Kodak became public in 1890-ish,
Okay.
somewhere around there, and that's when photography became like more and more accessible to people, and then we started to see it as like an artistic medium.
Okay.
It actually took photography a long time to even be considered an art form.
I remember that.
They used to be mostly considered like a scientific process.
Oh, I see that.
It makes sense.
And again, because we're so used to digital photography and Photoshop, like we have so little trust in the image these days. Up until like 1970, 80, even 1990, you saw a photograph and people were like, that's how that looks.
Yep.
Like that's why Ansel Adams, like a very famous photographer.
Oh my goodness, I wanted to bring him up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love him. Like
Yeah.
I still remember my parents actually, my mom had like prints of his over their bed.
I
when
did
was
too.
growing up.
Yes.
I had half done.
I was going to ask you
Yeah.
if your parents loved him.
Yes,
Okay.
I
Yes.
did.
Okay.
But like his work,
Yeah.
people back in the day would see a painting and kind of think the same thing that we think about a photo now of like, they might see a beautiful painting of the West.
Right.
They're in New York. They've never been out West. And they think, oh, but this is a painting. It's kind of romanticizing the idea. It's not exactly how it looks.
Oh, okay.
But Ansel Adams photography is what showed people, oh, this is how it actually looks.
Oh,
Which is why the government, like, they saw the images, and that's when they started to, like, make national parks and, like, protect the land, is because of, like, his photographs had a big part to do with that.
Yes.
That is
Yeah.
cool. I did not know that.
Because,
That's
yeah,
cool.
they didn't trust a painting
Yeah.
like they would a photograph.
That's very cool.
It couldn't possibly be that beautiful.
Yeah, can be. But then
Yeah.
they see a photograph and they're like,
and then they
oh,
see a half dome with
Has
the
to
moon.
be, yeah.
And, oh my.
And this is
Yeah.
obviously not the place we're going to go down this road in this episode, but it is interesting now how we're kind of backtracking from that. You see a photograph, you're like, oh, I don't trust that. You know,
Well, I
it's
think
like,
that's
yeah.
what
Yeah.
he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and that's why I think a lot of photographers today who are like artistic photographers like to use film. Like myself, I like to use film
Yeah.
and like to edit minimally to really like hone this idea of showing the world as it is and like taking in a photograph as this idea of like a slice of time. Because that's what a photograph is. It's
Yeah.
taking a moment in time and freezing it
Yes.
forever.
Yeah.
So when it comes to movements, it's sometimes hard to define the different genres and movements because we are like such a baby. There are entire movements that we know in art history that are longer than photography's been around.
Wow.
So sometimes
Yeah.
it's like hard
Yeah.
to say specifically. Road trip photography has been a tradition ever since like cars have been commercialized, like photographers have been going out on the road.
Route 66.
Route 66, this idea of Americana and all of that wrapped up in this idea of like road trip photography.
That actually, is road trip photography a thing in other countries, or is it more common in America?
It's more common in America, I'd say. I could be wrong. I'm always willing to be proven wrong,
Okay.
but all of the road trip photographers that I am aware of that are influential are mostly American. There are a few who are like immigrants. Like there's a couple that I even know personally, like do road trip and then go out and shoot the West, but they shoot it from the eye of like someone who's not from America.
Oh, that's very...
But
That
it's
is
mostly photographs of America.
In fairness, America, North America, in general,
yeah.
one of the biggest places to
Yes.
actually do a road trip.
Yep.
Like Europe, but
Yeah.
it's so small comparatively.
Well,
And
it's so part of our culture too. Like this
Right.
idea
Car
of the
culture.
family road trip, the
Yeah.
car culture is not the
pioneering
same.
out,
Yeah.
exploring.
The big thing with road trip photography in America is that it's so closely tied to this idea of freedom and like American ingenuity and this like the open road, American West,
Right.
The
Yeah.
frontier, like all of this idea of exploration
Yeah.
in America and autonomy, like all of it's kind of wrapped up in this idea
Yeah.
of the car where we can
That's
get in the
true.
car and we can drive anywhere we want.
Yeah.
You're not on a track. You're not like even when you're driving, yes, you're driving on a road. There is still this like feeling of autonomy versus
Yes.
sitting on a train or on a bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
You're in control. You're in the driver's seat.
I
literally.
Yeah,
love
because like
that.
when we were in England and Scotland, we were able to just take the train So it's similar to like in New York, not everyone probably even has a car
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah, right. Well, it's interesting when you had talked about photography being such a new medium. It's comparatively, like as far as like how the baby I think you referenced. I was thinking also about like the motor car, and you think about like the first Ford motor car, and you think about like Tesla Cybertruck, and you're like, wow,
Right.
like barely even the centuries passed, and here we have these like. And it's just insane.
I think
Wasn't it less than 100 years from the Wright brothers' first flight to the rocket?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was.
the Model T, I'm pretty sure came out in 1908.
It was the turn of the century.
So yeah, like we
Yep.
are just over 100 years of having the car, and we're
Yeah.
already to the Cybertruck.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Well, that's interesting though. Then the camera is only about 20 years older than the car.
Yes, yeah, like the commercialization of both of them. I think.
Right.
I think both of them have probably been around
Right.
longer,
Yeah,
but like
right.
But, like,
access to the public.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Public.
Yeah, they kind
right.
of came about around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so you said that when you were working for yourself, you were doing engagement photos and things like that. So why did you start doing road trip photography? Were there certain photographers you admired, books you admired, or you just got a car and wanted to take pictures of where you were going?
So as I was preparing for an undergrad, we had to do like a senior show, as most art majors do. And then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Couldn't figure it out. And my professor at the time, who was a great professor, I love him to death, had a book, and he said, I want you to look at this. I think you'll like it. And it was The Open Road by David Campany.
Which we talked about, and you showed it to us.
I brought today.
Yes.
That's the sad thing about photography in a podcast is you can't really look at photographs
No,
while
I
you do it. But
know it.
But I encourage everyone to go look up the book. It's great.
Yeah,
I just realized the green bush bunny should be our photo for the podcast.
It's also on the website if people want to go look at it there.
Oh,
too,
that's true.
But yes, I'll send you the photo for sure.
Whatever, sorry. That's neither here nor there. Go ahead.
But he had this book, and he gave it to me and said, I think you'll really like this. And I kind of went through it, and it was very much up my alley. And so I started thinking, like, what can I do?
Right.
I'm still an undergrad, and so there's
Yeah, I was about to ask,
a lot
when
of
was this? This
copying.
is an undergrad? Okay.
Yeah. And in undergrad, like, you're still learning who you are
sure.
and stealing
Yes.
from a lot of artists.
Yeah.
That's not a bad word. Like,
No, we know.
Like, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to do this road trip. And so I did a mini road trip, and I I drove to, as a kid, we moved around a decent amount. And so I drove to each of the houses that I lived in the order that I lived in them and took a photograph of the houses.
Oh man, was that emotional?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we mostly moved between Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky for a bit. So there was like maybe 7 or 8 houses.
Yeah.
And one hotel, which was a fun
Oh,
little bit.
interesting.
But we moved around a lot, and I went and photographed each one, and it was kind of emotional. It's kind of like, that's what I love about road trip photography is that it, any photograph you take takes place at a specific moment in time in a specific place, and those things are very tied together.
Yeah.
Especially on the road, the photographer feels it a lot. Like part of the work is the fact that I went to these places physically, you know, and so like the physical act of going to each place was just kind of almost like going through my past and just like going through my childhood and reliving and remembering it and all of those things.
It's like nostalgia and
very
motion.
nostalgic.
Yeah.
And so I did that project, loved it, loved the experience of it, and then left undergrad and didn't really make much like work for myself between undergrad and grad school. I was very good at in art school, you know, each week they kind of say, all right, here's your little assignment and prompt for the week. And I could take that prompt and I could like still follow the rules, but break it and do whatever I want. And I was very creative in that way. But then you graduate and they go, great, now go make whatever you want. And I was like, what? I don't know what
guidance.
I want. And I had this idea that like I had to have like a plan. I had to know like I love the project I did, but before I left on my road trip, I knew every photo I was going to take. I knew I was going to take those 7 photos of each of the houses.
Oh,
and that was going to be it.
Yeah.
Like I had it all planned out.
Oh, interesting.
And so I felt like I had to have this whole plan before I started taking photographs.
Yeah.
And they put me in this little frozen, like I couldn't create because I couldn't come up with anything.
So when you did the project going house to house, did you not stop and take other pictures in between?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Wow.
Well, part of that was just based on like the project that I had in my head.
Right.
Part of that was also I was using a large format camera, which is like when you think about old timey cameras with the hood and everything, like it's not one that you just like walk around town with.
Yeah, you don't whip it
like,
out.
I mean, again, if you're Ansel Adams, you'll hike up a mountain with that. But I was not that guy.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so I had it in plan. And like that was the other thing is I had very limited quote resources because I only had I think 10 to 14 like shots. I only had a few mess ups like of film because that large format film is kind of expensive and you can't easily carry it around because it's not a roll of film, you know, like you think of it's a sheet. So so no, I did not take a lot of extra photos during that trip.
I didn't even think about that, the camera being like that. So that makes a lot of sense.
It was one of the reasons that I wanted to go to grad school because I was like, I'm going to need help learning how to make work for myself.
Okay.
And I know that in grad school, they'll make me do that. They're not going to give me prompts. They're not going to say, you know, this week we're working on contrast, make a really contrasted image. Like, they're going to say, what are you trying to say as an artist? You know? And so that was one of the reasons I went. And my very first semester, I was paired with a photographer and I was like kind of saying all this to him and he was just staring at me. And then at the end, he was just like, you're a photographer because you think with a camera in your hand. Go take photos and you'll figure it out later. Like he was just like, what are you talking about? Like go out and shoot. You liked the road trip, go on a road trip, take photos and see what happens.
Oh, wow.
And
That's amazing.
Some of the best advice I got.
That's
for, like,
how
the
I
whole,
write.
Yeah. Like, and, well, like that also, like I've started writing more and like that entire thing changed my life probably because I was just like, same thing with writing. I would see the blank page and I would like, I don't know what to like I just have to get something down. I have to figure and then edit later. Same thing with photography. I went on the road, shot for 3 weeks on the road with our friend Jesse, who is a producer for this very podcast.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jesse.
Went for 3.5 weeks with me on the road for my first little bit.
That's so cool.
And just kind of shot whatever. Like
what kind of camera were you using then?
So then I was using it's called a medium format.
Okay.
Which is not the full like 4x5 with the hood and you can like whatever, like you can still carry it around, but the film is bigger. So when you think of like a 35 millimeter, what everyone used in the 90s and before, of just you have your little film strip, 35 millimeters across is what it's like measuring.
Right.
A medium format's going to be a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And so like each roll, instead of getting 36 images, is going to get 12 to 15 depending on the camera.
Okay.
It also means that the image is going to be a little bit higher quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was walking around with that. And it's also a waist level camera, which means that I hold it at my waist and I look down into it.
I've seen people do that.
Instead of holding it to my eye.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's fun. It like, personally, it makes me feel like I'm more connected to the world around me. Because I'm not holding something in front of my face. You know, I'm still...
That's really interesting.
Like, that's just like a personal thing.
Yeah.
I just like doing it that way.
That makes sense, though.
And I shot the whole project on that camera.
Okay.
Does it make it hard, though, to shoot portraits or people?
Okay, so I do have like an attachment that for portraits I can do that.
Okay.
Because the way that it is, the camera, like everything's reversed. So if I want to move it to the left, I have to move it to the right, like all that sort of stuff. And so if I'm taking a portrait, it makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
So I do have a little attachment for portraits if I want to.
Okay.
I don't always use that, but I will.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing with portraiture, for me at least, all the portraits that I take for the project are people that I have like a personal relationship with. Like I am not the guy that photographs strangers. So
good
for me.
I don't know. That just seems creepy.
Well, that's a large when we're talking about movements. Like a large movement is street photography.
Yeah.
And like people in New York will just go around and there's some street photographers that just like take photos of people on the street as they walk by.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a whole Instagram channel about
the Humans of New York.
That's what I was thinking.
That's different because he gets their permission and gets their stories.
Well, that's a version of street photography for sure.
I just realized that. But what I was hearing you say is like taking pictures of people that don't know they got their picture taken.
I mean,
that's weird to me.
There is,
but that's just me.
Yeah, photographers have a wide like view when it comes to the ethics of taking a photograph. I definitely like knowing the person, but there are people in between. I'm going to say his name wrong. I think Dawood Bey, I believe is how you say his name, has there's a show up at the Denver Art Museum right now. Actually, it's amazing. It's so cool. And he's a street photographer. Okay. And he has gone around and takes portraits of. He's African American. He takes pictures of African American people in their like neighborhoods and homes. But what he does is he doesn't know them personally necessarily, but he asks them, can I take your portrait? He sets them up for the portrait. And the way that he does it is he uses the large format camera. Do you like this? Like I keep using the hand motion. The podcast listeners can't see, but I keep motioning for the hood over my head.
Yes. He's putting the hood over his head every time I say that.
Camera. Yes. I'm just getting like monk vibes. A cowl being thrown over his head.
But there's an attachment you can put on those that makes a large Polaroid. The way that those work is that you like take the photo and then you peel it apart and it simultaneously makes a negative and a Polaroid picture. And so he would take these people's photographs and he would give them the Polaroid and he would keep the negative for himself.
I love this.
And so then there's like this whole, you get an image, I get an image, and a relationship, and I'm giving you something, you're giving me something. It's very interesting and it's very cool.
And does he get their stories the same way the Humans of New York guy does? Do you know?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No. I should have brought his book. I have his book too.
We were talking about how a picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say. And like, really, you're telling a story without words, which, you know, as a writer, I mean, I dabble and paint and sketch and stuff, but that's not how I don't think I'm telling a story when I'm painting or drawing. So is that really what you're looking for when you're taking a picture, is a story?
I don't think consciously I'm thinking of a story.
Okay.
It comes out at the end. Like I always say that I take photographs where my words fail me. Like I do not think of myself as even though I do some writing for the Anselm Society, obviously had to write a thesis paper. Like I've done writing.
I know.
It's
I read
not-
your thesis paper.
Yes,
it was
Mindy was
excellent.
Mindy was an editor
Ooh.
Yes.
for my thesis paper, which was very helpful. She was very kind.
I did not need to do very much. I was like, I don't know.
But it doesn't feel like a native language to me. Like using my words
hear
writing
you.
does not feel
Yeah.
like my
Yeah.
first language.
Right.
Whereas,
Honestly, though,
like,
one of my favorite anecdotes, though, about the word photograph is writing with light.
yeah,
So-
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like it's
It really
Like
is.
what
it's
it literally
painting with
means.
light. Yeah.
Yep. I love it.
Yeah, like we always in school would look at our degrees when we're done, and we're just like, we have a piece of paper that says, "I understand how light works." Like that's what all this is.
Oh,
Like,
that's really cool.
which I mean, yeah, I love.
So, we were talking about how some paintings and photographs and things are, maybe there won't be a title. And, Matt and Christine and I were talking about that, and we didn't really get that. We don't understand that as well because we work in words
And letters.
and things like that. So what is, like, if an artist is going to untitle something, what is that, an invitation, or is that like, why would they leave it untitled? Help us.
Yeah, I view it as an invitation of this kind of open door for an artist to like let you kind of enter the work and let the viewer take in the work as they see fit.
Okay.
An act of hospitality.
It's an act of hospitality. The artist doesn't want to like. Sometimes, yes, you want to give context to the work. You want them to know. All of my images. For this project, I have just titled where I took them. Like it's just the city and the state is where I took them. To give like some sort of context to the image.
Now, did you do that for the viewer, or did you do it for the image itself?
I did it for the viewers.
Okay.
I wanted to show so throughout the project, it's called Ordinary Times in America. I should probably say that.
Okay, good. Yeah. Say that slower. Sorry.
Ordinary Times in America.
Cool. I wanted
Sorry.
our listeners to catch that.
I talk fast.
I do
when
too.
when
So
get
that's why I
excited.
caught it. Guilty as charged.
I think all three of us do that.
Yes.
So it's fine.
It's like we're friends or something.
And-
Yeah.
So our listeners probably can't listen to it in some like 2.5 speed.
You sound like Alvin and the
Oh,
Chipmunks.
that's true. They can slow it down. That's their problem.
During the project, I drove to all lower 48 United States, like states in the country. And so part of the reason of me wanting to title it is to show the breadth of like where I went.
Neat.
Oh, that makes sense. You weren't just hanging out in like, the four corners.
Yeah, there's a part of me that like likes the idea of the viewer looking at one of my images and it being nostalgic and then being like, oh, that feels like my backyard.
Right.
If they see it's from California and they grew up in Kentucky, like they might not be like, oh, that's my backyard, but they can still feel the vibe. Like I wanted the project to be about America as a whole,
The breadth
of it.
But then on the other hand, if they do, even if they see that it's in California, they
Yeah.
still might see that it looks like their backyard. And that
Yes.
is like
a whole other experience.
right?
But when an artist wants to leave it untitled, I always view it as, the artist just doesn't want to give you like you should be looking for this,
Right.
Even in an abstract painting, if they title it something, even if you are like the most like artsy fartsy, like pretentious artist, you're going to start treating it like a Where's Waldo, where like you want to like, how do I want to try and see it. And maybe the artist doesn't want you to be looking for that.
Do you know what? I do that too. Like
Yeah.
sometimes if there's a painting, like, I think I mentioned Mark Rothko before, and I love Mark Rothko.
Love his work, yeah.
I will say a certain member of my family doesn't get it. It's okay. I love you anyway, Peter. I love Mark
I love you too,
Rothko.
Jesse.
But if there is a title, I didn't think of that before, but I will kind of go, well, why did they name it that? And then if I'm doing that, then I'm not freely looking at the work.
I view the title as like, yes, like the front door to the work.
Okay.
And if it's titled, the artist is inviting you to look at it this way.
Right.
If they're leaving it untitled, they're leaving it up to you.
Okay. In a generous way, not a cranky.
Not a crank like.
way.
I mean, I'm not going to stand here and say.
Well, we don't know. I mean-
there's not a single cranky artist in the whole world. Like, I'm not going to say that.
That's just not true.
I think my issue was I'm not like, everyone knows Picasso was not like the greatest human, and he was the first one whose quotes I read about Untitled, and so I think that painted the way that I viewed Untitled works. So I'm glad I know you, Isaac. Anyway, for
That's
other
very
reasons
cool, though. I do
too.
love that. I didn't think of it as an act of hospitality. I always thought of Untitled visual art as an act of in hospitality.
Right. Now we need to go to a museum.
Well, I'm going to museum anytime.
Oh, I
I
know.
think it also just depends. I mean, with
I have
any
guest
art
passes.
form, it does depend on the medium. If you were to
That's
leave a
true.
book untitled, that is very inhospitable,
Yeah.
I think.
Right, okay. yeah.
True.
But like,
That's making them work way too
Yeah,
hard. Can
you're-
you imagine
you're-
like a 900-page book that's untitled?
yeah,
like,
you're an
wait.
artist who works with words. You should
Give
be
me
able
some
to.
words.
You should be able to like do that.
Yeah.
Whereas a visual artist doesn't necessarily like work in words as their first language.
Not necessarily, right?
Not necessarily.
Right.
And so like it makes sense to me that sometimes they just want to leave it untitled because they want you to interact with the work.
That does
And-
make sense.
And so it's like it's so interactive because it's asking the viewer to participate in it. And so it's almost like if there's no title, then every viewing of the work is individual to whomever is looking at it.
I do think I will say that when a work is untitled, it does require a little bit more work from the viewer because you are not given a key. You're not
Well,
given
that's why I
that
said
entry
like
level.
participatory. That's almost a good thing.
But yeah, I think that it requires you as the viewer to interact a little bit more with it, which
Yeah.
might be what the artist wants.
Right.
yeah, could be.
And sometimes that is harder. I'm going to admit, like you
But
know,
first world problem.
yeah, first
You're
world
making
problem
me
for
work
sure. You
on
can.
figuring out this painting in this museum.
An artist
what's
spent
hard?
hours and hours of their life creating this work. I think you can spend 5 minutes thinking, "What is this about?" Like,
Ooh, drop your mic. You can't drop the mic. It's pinned to your shirt.
That's hilarious. Okay, so
Yeah,
on that
you had
note, though,
something, Christy.
Yeah, no. I'm just like jumping off of that in terms of artists interacting with work, and especially interacting with visual arts. How ought someone interact with road trip photography
yeah,
itself?
Yeah, that's a good question.
a lot of photographers nowadays will make books. Like that
Okay.
is kind of the end goal.
Okay.
A lot of, I'm not going to say all, but again, a lot of road trip photographers, a lot of photographers nowadays, me included, think of their work as like a whole body. You know, artists in the past, you think of like they have periods and they work through certain things, but like there's not like, you know, this body of work goes together, this body of work. Like for me, Ordinary Times in America, I'm still like, the project is shot. I have over 700 images to choose from. We have a stack here of maybe 100 or so.
Yeah.
And if I was to make a book, maybe 80% of these will make it into the book.
Because you're editing the
Because
story.
I'm editing the story and I'm creating
Speaking of
the
stories.
narrative that I want.
Narrative.
And I'm figuring out now after I've shot it. You know, because I've kind of shot it, I've worked through the things, you know, over the last 3 years. And so now it's like, okay, how do I hone this in to be the best narrative and to be the best experience for the viewer? And so while like there are photographers who like do road trip photography and like they have these images that become iconic, or they have these images that like they want to celebrate in the gallery. I don't think most of them wouldn't say like, oh, I view like this photograph as like the entire meaning of my work. Like the whole work is the entire project.
Well, that would be like me saying a chapter is all you need to know out of my book.
Exactly. Yes.
Like, it's
Yeah.
not enough.
Yeah. Like for me,
You're saying more than that.
you will not get the entire breadth of Ordinary Times in America by looking at just the bunny image.
So-
that is definitely a part of it, but it's not the entirety of it.
Oh, yeah. The bunny image is just a great one to
No,
talk about.
I love it. Yeah.
I love that.
My advisor is like, to this day, is like, that's the cover of the book. That has to be the cover
Oh,
of the
it
book.
has
You
to
love
be
it.
the cover of
I'm
the
not
book.
convinced, but I do like that image a lot.
I almost bought that one.
High praise.
I ended up buying the one with the apples on the counter. I don't even know. Is that from
They're actually onions.
onions? I know,
Yes.
but they look like apples.
They do. They're like in a red bag. Yeah.
I know. I actually knew they were onions, but in my brain, I think of them as apples because
Yeah.
that's prettier.
I do sometimes. In my head, they're also apples, but like they're onions. Yeah.
They are. Is that's not part of the Ordinary Time?
Yeah,
it
it
is.
is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So when you do it, do you think that are you gonna try to make sure you have something from each of the states you went to? Are you gonna worry about geography?
I am not necessarily going to worry about geography. Like, part of my process was like any state that I went to, I wanted to take an image. And so like I wasn't just going to go there for no reason.
Right.
But I'm not going to be like, oh, I have to include
Yeah.
an image from each one, because
I have
for
to have
me,
Wyoming.
yeah,
I mean,
for me that's not important to the work. You know,
Okay.
there could be a road trip photographer who like it's important to the work that I have one photo from each state. And
Yeah, it's part of the narrative
says
they
something
want to
about the
tell.
narrative.
Yeah, it depends
For
on
me,
your narrative.
that is not necessarily the narrative per se. I'm more focused on the mundaneness. A lot of my images have to do with like finding beauty in the mundane.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite photos of yours are the you call them something like after the party or something like that.
Yeah, so that's not part of this
Those aren't
project.
part of that. Okay.
That was one of the only things that I did between undergrad and grad school that I was even sort of like, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
And it was Remnants of a Party.
Remnants of a party.
Yeah,
So
and
have
it
you
was-
seen those,
No.
Christina?
They're on my Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. They're just pictures of the room after there's nobody in there, but you
don't
can
think I
tell.
follow
It
you on
was
Instagram.
It was the
Fabulous.
So like a pizza box or
it was the next morning after one of my
Yeah.
friends' birthday parties or whatever. We all spent the weekend, and there's just like a bottle of vodka, and there's just
Yeah.
like cups everywhere, and
I need to see this.
all sorts
Yeah.
of just random little things.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
That's
Can I
very
ask
cool.
you about one of the photos in your collection? Okay. So one of the ones that just caught my eye, which seems so random, but which is why I love it, because it's not something that I would frame on my wall. But like you said, that's not what road trip photography is. And so you were talking about this collection. So you were talking about just now beauty in the mundane. I think you said that. Is that what the word you used?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So there's this picture that I saw in your collection of two mattresses stacked on top of each other
Yeah.
in the middle of this like beautiful like green bushes and
Yeah.
everything. And I just really liked it.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is like, why? But there's like kind of like you said, there's this like mix of like there was human activity here. There was human life. It was ordinary. It was mundane. And it's just I don't know, there's something that shows a sign of life.
Even if it's humanity,
past.
even when the people aren't in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was my other question for you
Yeah.
is like, where do people fit in? I think you were interested in that too, Mandy, right?
Yeah.
Like, where do people fit into your narrative and road trip photography in
Yeah,
general?
do you
Although I
let
know-
them pose? Do you? It doesn't seem like you do. I've looked at your photos, so I'm asking. But
It always depends a little bit. I'm always looking, as a photographer, obviously, always looking at light. So if I see there's an area where I'm like, oh, light's really pretty, and I'm with a friend, I'll be like, go stand over there for a minute.
Right.
One thing that I like to do a lot, I was going to try and find the image in the stack, but
Yeah.
I'm just not, I don't know if
I
I
did.
can.
I saw one where look, a sweet lady was walking away.
found it.
Okay.
So an image like this, which again is, I'm not trying to plug myself, but like these images are on my website. Like everyone should go look at.
Yes, I
You
love.
should
this.
plug yourself.
you're-
We'll plug you for you.
When you're talking about art, you should be looking at art, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this image is of my friend Emily, like on a dock, and so
Yeah.
this is a great example of we were hanging out. I was on my road trip. My entire like trip, I was couch surfing. Like that was part of the experience for me. Was like historically the road trip photographer is like a lonely gig.
Yeah.
There's a lot of photos in these books that I brought of people photographing their hotel rooms where they stayed, kind of alone. I wanted to go a little bit against that and kind of focus on community. So I stayed with people that I knew
That's
and was friends
awesome.
with and that I loved. And
That
so,
needs to make it into your book, if I may say so.
and so this photo of Emily on the dock, did I capture that moment when it happened? Not necessarily.
Right.
But we were hanging out and she was talking to me about something and like did that. And I went,
Yeah.
hey, wait a minute. And like, do that again. So it's this weird kind of in between of, it's not a posed photo. It's not a snapshot. It's a little in between.
It's
Like,
reenacted.
that moment happened, but it's not exactly like captured perfectly, which again,
Yeah.
I'm not standing here saying like I captured all of these perfectly. Like photography is
Subjective.
painting with light, like you
Yeah.
said. Like
Yeah, she
there's
said.
there's a little bit like Christina said.
Although they didn't need. Never mind. Podcast listeners didn't know who you pointed to, but it's fine.
We're all good. We're having fun.
We're all good.
Yeah, it's about creating a narrative, creating a vibe. Like I said that is important to this story, and I had to recreate it. We took a few photos, like normally with people. I do normally try and do a few different poses and take a couple of images because people move, they blink, they look awkward. You know, like that just happens when you take a photo. When I take photos of like object and spaces, I normally give myself one shot and then I'm done.
Oh, okay.
Because I am a chronic, if I have a digital camera, that's why I like using film. Another reason I like using
Yeah,
film.
that's great. I've
is
heard
it-
that.
Force yourself to be picky.
Yes, I have to be picky and I have to like
patient.
take my time with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
When I shoot a wedding, 3,000 images. Like,
Oh, yeah.
easy. Like, just like,
Well, you kind of have to.
yeah. And like this part,
Yeah.
chronic overshooter. And so using the film, like, limits me a little
Discipline.
bit. Yeah.
Disciplines
Yeah,
you.
built-in
I
discipline.
Love that.
Yeah.
So do you...
This
go ahead.
question, I wanted to go back to the mattresses.
Yes.
Um,
She needs a nap.
Godfather.
Yeah.
Just thinking Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. You've got mail.
Oh.
And it was
I was like, when were they in The Godfather?
Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan were in The Godfather.
and that'd be funny. No, he's constantly referencing that movie.
That
and
is
she's like,
true.
what is it with men and The Godfather?
That's true.
Anyway, so you were talking about like how you love to like, it's the light that really captures your attention. And this mattress photo, I found it again in your stack, which is why I'm referencing it again, has so much interesting dappled light on it. Why did you see that and take it? Like, what about that lighting, that moment made you say, ooh, mattresses, gonna take this shot?
So, part of me can't necessarily explain it. I've written a lot about it in my like thesis.
Okay. Mhm.
About this tie between intuition and my gut.
Okay.
Throughout my whole life, like I have always had sometimes these gut reactions and like feelings about things. Even to this point of as a kid, if like I told my mom like she'd be like, "Oh, go play with Billy" or whatever, and I'd be like, "I don't want to," like whatever. She sometimes would be like, again, homeschool only child. She was like, "No, you need to be socialized. Like, go
Right.
go play with Billy."
Right.
But it got to the point where like a lot of times when I would say like, "No, I don't want to do that," it was because something was going on or so, whatever.
Yeah.
There was a reason that I was having this intuition. And my mom, even at like, she says like I was like 6 or 7 years old, she started being like, okay, like she just
She
trusted
trusted
Right.
it. That's
because
cool.
that came out a few times of being here like maybe he was right, like
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
and so like I was never able to like fully explain it.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to talking with that mentor about like thinking visual, like kind of a lot of things clicked soon after that of
yeah.
that gut is like how I interact with the Holy Spirit. Like that's how I have that conversation. Like my dad is someone who has we all have a close relationship with the Holy Spirit. Like but my dad will say numerous times, like he heard the Lord say this, he heard the Spirit say this.
Right.
And I've never felt like I've heard like the voice of
Right.
God, but like that gut is like very important to me of having that relationship.
That's
And, like,
exactly the way Bethany was. That's how she knew she was supposed to be a nurse. It was a gut thing when
Yeah.
she was 15. But she's never like heard him say words.
And I have a very similar feeling when I'm taking a photograph of like it's this very spiritual kind of relationship that I'm having. And so like there'll be times like those mattresses where I just like I said, walking is a large part of my process. And so I was visiting my friend Max. It's in Atlanta, and after
I
breakfast
thought that was Atlanta.
I said after one morning I was like
Something about the trees. Yeah.
after breakfast I was just like I'm gonna go for a walk. Just went for a walk, saw those, and kind of sat there, got this gut feeling, and it's not just like point and shoot. I kind of take a moment, take in the scene,
Yeah.
kind of compose the image how I want it, move myself around.
Yeah.
The camera that I use doesn't have like a zoom lens or anything like that, so I have to move my body a lot
Oh, I
to
love
get
that.
where
Yeah.
I like want the image.
Yeah, I like that too.
And then I take it. But there is kind of this initial gut, like I'm gonna take a photo here, and for me that's like a conversation with the Spirit.
That's
oh my
really
gosh,
cool.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks for that.
we are actually kind of running out of time, which is annoying. But can you, I do want to talk about, you brought some books for us to look at. And I think this one in particular, the Joel Sternfeld on this site. If you want to just mention this book, because I think our
love this
listeners
book.
would love this book.
Yes. It was actually a gift from my mentor and my other advisor for my thesis project. They have a tradition at the school where they buy each graduating student an art book that they think they would like, and they pick this one out for me.
So again, it was
And-
Joel Sternfeld
Yes, on this site.
this site.
And his work is kind of like my original Houses project, where
Right.
he goes out and has a very specific, like site-specific photography idea, where he goes out and shoots images where a lot of these tragedies happen. He went and he shot where like the Stonewall riots happened. He shot where Emmett Till, some of those things happened. Where he went to the hotel in Memphis
where Martin Luther King Jr. was shot.
And so like a lot of these different places that he went and shot over the course of like I think 3 to 5 years on the road. But it's all, again, he goes to these places, and it's kind of this idea of like we have to, as Americans, rectify this idea that like a lot of these tragedies have happened in specific places on our soil.
Yeah.
Well, what's really interesting to me, what's striking about the Mount Rushmore photo in particular, is every photo I've ever seen of Mount Rushmore, it's just focused on the mountain. But he clearly intentionally took it from farther back so that you see the apparatus of the lights built like facing them. And so it gives you a whole other perspective on this is very orchestrated and here's America like in, you know, industrializing or commercializing this mountain where,
I think a lot of photographers like to do that. They like to go to the places that everyone goes to photograph and then photograph it in a different way so that you see it differently.
That's kind of the point of photography,
for sure.
is to make you, because we see these things all the time, but
photography is a great tool for, again, because it's taking a moment in time in a very specific place. It is a very good tool for showing the world how it is. And so
I love that.
The photographers, though, want you to ask, why did they take this photo in this way? Why did you go to Mount Rushmore and not just take it of Mount Rushmore? Like, why did you get the lights?
Back?
Why did you step back? There's another image from another one of my favorite photographers, Alex Soth, at Niagara Falls. And it's kind of like, you can kind of see Niagara Falls in the background, but it's of kind of the overlook in front of it. And there's this girl taking a selfie right in front of it. Like, and it's, you know, it's like this commentary, it's like a meta commentary on image making and, you know, all these different things. So again, like taking those very iconic places that we're used to and reframing them.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
This is a great coffee table book.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
I need that book. Okay. Well, I don't want to stop, but we have to stop because we're running out of time and wine. No, I'm kidding. No, we have plenty of wine. It's okay. Well, Isaac, thank you so much for talking with us about this. This was so cool.
You made this pretty painless.
Darn it, we were trying to torture you. Well, as you can tell, things are winding down here at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. The fire is down to embers, the customers are trundling home, and you've polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. If you have a minute, we would love for you to rate and review the show on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts, and then you can go sideways to Instagram and follow Isaac. Anyway,
what's his handle?
It's just at Isaac Hands.
Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next time.